Welcome to Acts of Awakening, a series of heartfelt conversations about the roles that we play, the masks that we wear, and the archetypes we embody. Acts of Awakening is a play place to unpack the moments in life that call us to change roles and dissolve masks, individuating us into the next version of ourselves. Together, we will explore the perspective of the cosmic play, inspiring soulful insights and a deeper understanding of the journey of becoming. Host Suri Sawyer is a certified death doula, Reiki healer, yoga guide, ancestral medicine practitioner, and multidimensional psychic. As a walking transmission, equal parts cosmic mirror, soul whisperer, and multidimensional midwife, she embodies the energy of a lucid dream. Soft yet activating, grounded yet infinite. Suri weaves shadow and light without fear. Her essence feels like plant medicine incarnate. Her presence initiates recalibration and an invitation into introspection, remembrance, and sacred revolution. Now here's your host, Suri Sawyer.
Good day, beloved Homo sapiens. It is Suri here on Acts of Awakening, where we explore the concept of waking up here on planet Earth through the lens of Jungian psychology, which states that within our collective consciousness, there are several different archetypes, and each of us have them, but depending on our upbringing, our indoctrination, our personality structure, we really play out certain archetypes over other archetypes. I'm going to share with you two archetypes today that I perceive really my guest embodies deeply. And as always, as you hear about this archetype, see if you resonate with this one. Is it something that you personally display and play out? And if you do, give it a name. What's the name of your caretaker, for example? What's the name of your mystic? And you can learn to identify these personality aspects in you and decide if you want to play them up or play them down. You can also observe if you see these archetypes in the people around you. So the first archetype that I see, hello, Jennifer Rose, so good to see you, darling. The first archetype that I'd like to talk about, we've done this one before because it does seem that I attract a lot of caretakers, which I don't think is a coincidence because I have a very strong caretaker archetype too. And I am assuming that most of the people that choose to view this channel and view this show also have a strong caretaker or caregiver archetype. So let's get into that. The caretaker archetype is deeply nurturing, someone who provides support, love, and protection. In its light aspect, the caretaker is empathetic, selfless, and stabilizing, offering a safe harbor for others. In its shadow, however, the caretaker can become overly self-sacrificing, neglecting their own needs, or becoming controlling. Their gift to the world is the capacity to create a sense of belonging and emotional safety. We are going to get into this a little bit later, and I would just like to share the woman that I'm interviewing today is a postpartum doula and supports families to sleep train their babies, which is why I chose the caretaker archetype, because this woman embodies the capacity to create a sense of belonging and emotional safety. So that's the caretaker. If it resonates with you, please let me know. And also, as always, let me know what you name it. Vivian, it's great to see you. Nita, it's great to see you. And Lady in Thy Creation, I hope I did that well. It's also really good to see you too. And hello from Sydney, Australia. All right, you guys, the second archetype that I chose for this person is the mystic. In my experience of knowing this woman, she has reached the stage of crone, and she has taken all of the life experience that she has been through and turned it into absolute magic, truth, and kind of a sense of authority that is soft and gentle. So here is a little bit about the mystic. The mystic is the seeker of truth and transcendence, attuned to the unseen and the spiritual. In its light aspect, the mystic is wise, connected, and inspiring, guiding others toward deeper meaning. In its shadow, the mystic can become withdrawn, isolated, or disconnected from reality, lost in fantasy or arrogance. Their gift to the world is the ability to help others see beyond the ordinary, opening up doors to inner wisdom and universal insights. Do you find the mystic in your own being? And if so, what do you call it? Yes, Vivian, postpartum doula, yay. Hello from Liverpool, darling one. All right, it is time for me to read the bio of my guest, so hold on to your hats. Joy Bostrom is the founder of The Joy of Sleep and a postpartum doula with over 20 years of experience, caring for both single babies and twins. Anybody who's ever worked with twins, that is quite a feat just all by itself. As a mother of two, she understands firsthand the joys and the challenges of parenthood. Her journey began in England, born to American parents, and she was raised in Mexico from the ages of 3 to 17, making her fluent in both English and Spanish. Throughout her adult life, she has lived across the United States and in Costa Rica. Before becoming a doula, she worked in the medical field as a medical assistant, but her passion has always been caring for newborns and supporting families. From a young age, she felt called to help babies thrive and for parents to feel confident in their journey. Over the years, her multicultural experience and hand-on expertise has allowed her to develop proven strategies, tools, and techniques to help newborns sleep better and longer. And now I would like to introduce to you my sacred guest, Joy Bostrom. This is kind of fun because normally a screen pops up, but I'm just going to turn it. Welcome to the show, Joy.
Thank you so much, Suri.
It's wonderful to have you there. That's better. Okay, wonderful. Well, Joy, one of the first questions that I'd like to ask you is about growing up in Mexico and moving to the United States. Don't worry, we're going to get into these baby things, but this is one of the most fascinating things that I perceive about Joy, because you can see she looks like a gorgeous white American woman. But when I interact with her, I see over and over, wait a second, she is so Mexican. So what was it like to grow up as a tall white woman in Mexico?
So it was quite interesting. You know, I arrived when I was 3 years old and didn't know a word of Spanish. And my parents put me in kindergarten in Spanish. And so it was like, have to learn really fast. And I was painfully shy as I was growing up and had to develop into knowing how to socialize and connect with other people. But it was definitely a big jump when I had to move to the United States at the age of 18. And I felt like I was a Mexican in the body of a white girl. And here I am in the States with culture shock, complete culture shock, because we'd visited the United States, but I hadn't grown up there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, I grew up with American parents. So they taught me, you know, basic English. I didn't know expressions like example, a piece of cake. People are like, oh, that's a piece of cake. And I was like, I don't know what that means. So
what's a piece of cake? Where's the cake?
Exactly. That's exactly what I used to say. What piece of cake and where is it? And so it was definitely a challenge. It was a big adjustment to become an American again. And so, yeah, big jump.
Mm-hmm. Huge jump.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And we can dive into more of that multicultural experience later, because it also bleeds into some of our other topics. Joy, would you share with us a little bit? My first question or thing that I'd like to talk about with you is telepathy. So in Joy's practice, The Joy of Sleep, where she works with newborn babies and parents, one of her most important approaches is to remind parents that their babies are telepathic and how to utilize that and leverage that for the health and well-being of the family system before children can speak. So will you tell us a little bit about how you discovered that children were telepathic and also how you utilize that in your industry now?
Thank you for that question. So I don't know that I really understood the word telepathy, but I would walk into clients' homes And all of a sudden, I would feel like the baby had told me what the mom needed to learn. And I really felt many times that the babies were calling me in to come in and kind of educate the parents. What do I need? How do I communicate? And I would come in and immediately know what the problems were. But I would sit there and I would wait for the parents to tell me, and then I would confirm that it was true. And then later, Suri introduced me to the telepathy tapes. And I was like, oh, this is what I've been hearing. This is what I've been sensing this whole time. But I never really put a word to it. I just knew that I had a knowing, but I didn't really understand how. So through the telepathy tapes, I started understanding that it doesn't only happen, obviously, in children who are autistic, which is what the telepathy tapes are talking about. But I understood that we all have the ability to communicate telepathically. But I also understood that these babies were communicating with me telepathically. And I was able to understand that and now explain it to the parents.
If you guys haven't delved into the telepathy tapes yet, I highly recommend it. I feel like a lot of the people that follow the Spiral Network are mediums or psychics themselves. There's something about the telepathy tapes that puts orientation to a lot of the telepathic nature that we naturally possess. And for myself, I listened to it and it was highly confirming, as well as it seemed to open up my telepathic capacity even further because I was receiving confirmation about telepathy and things that I had experienced. And so it sounds like it did the same thing for you as well.
Exactly. It's almost like it put it into words for me, what I was experiencing. And I was so excited. I kept coming over to Suri and telling her like, oh my God, this is so real. And she actually ended up re-listening to them after we talked about it. But it just really helped me understand that what I was sensing wasn't just a figment of my imagination. It was something that was really happening. So it was very helpful.
Good.
I definitely recommend the telepathy tapes.
Can you share a story of receiving telepathic communication from a child that helped you do the sleep training and the guidance?
Yeah, well, for example, a couple hired me. I come into their home and they have a 5-month-old. And this 5-month-old just cannot sleep. And they're like, we hold him all day long and we don't know why he can't sleep. So I walked into the home and all I felt was like, oh, they're holding me and they just won't let me get comfortable. And that was like the message that I received. And then as the parents were explaining to me and even showing me, like, this is what we do. And we walk around with our baby and we rock him to sleep. And I said, that's making your baby so uncomfortable. It's sort of like when you're with your partner and your partner is spooning and holding you, there comes a point where you're just like, okay, like, I love you, but let me go to sleep. And we all kind of need that space to just like, finally relax. And the parents actually were like, okay, we'll try it. And I stayed there for a nap and we laid the baby down in the crib. And I would say within 15 minutes, he was asleep. And they're like, oh my God, like, you're a baby whisperer. And I'm like, yeah, maybe, sure. But basically, your just baby needed a little bit of space. And sometimes when we're holding our baby, we're transferring our anxiety to that baby. So let's say I'm trying to put the baby to sleep, but I'm also thinking about, I haven't washed the dishes and the food is in the oven and it's going to burn. And I'm worried. I'm transferring all that anxiety to this baby. And so, of course, the baby can't fall asleep because the baby is digesting all of my thoughts and all of my feelings. And I just need to give him some space where he can just be alone. And, it's sort of like you don't want to fall asleep with someone talking to you and telling you all the things that they have to do. And so as soon as they put this baby down, he was asleep within a few minutes.
So simple, right? And maybe for the parents seemed counterintuitive. I really love what Krish is saying. I hold my kitty too close to as well. Krish, I will tell you that I do the same thing. And I know it's funny, especially with cats, they want their spaciousness, right? And Vivian, you also work with adolescents. Vivian, would you also say that you've observed that with young children, that they're also still highly telepathic and haven't lost the connection to the telepathy quite yet? And then Labyrinth, that's what it is. Labyrinth lady over there, telepathy is real. We hear and know so much. And it's a soupy soup. I agree with that. I was just reflecting on a story from elementary school when I failed to fill out a spelling test. And when my mom asked me why I didn't write any words on my spelling test, I was like, there was too much chatter. I think I was like 6 or 7 years old. I was in second grade. And I was like, yeah, there was too much chatter in the room. I couldn't focus because I just was hearing people's thoughts. And my mom was like, what? And I was like, yeah, there's like 28 kids in my classroom. Everyone's thinking and I can't focus. And I wasn't believed at the time. And that was crushing, actually. It changed the way I related to telepathy. Vivian, yes, children are still very telepathic. Vivian, do you find that working with children increases your capacity for telepathy? I'm going to have you answer here, Vivian, and I'm going to ask Joy the same question. Joy, do you perceive that the opportunity to work with babies on a regular basis has increased your capacity to be aware of and exercise your telepathic gifts?
Definitely. Once I've understood that they are communicating with me, then I tune in very, very much, even ahead of time. Like right now, I have a client that I'm going to fly out to help. And I already feel their little boy talking to me and and it's almost like my soul is connecting with him. And even we had a video call, and the little boy woke up and they brought him onto the camera and he locked eyes with me. And I was like, whoa. And so I started talking to him. I'm here to help you, and we're going to learn new skills. And it might feel a little uncomfortable, but I'm going to be here to support you. So yes, it's definitely made me more aware of the abilities that we all have, which has opened up a door for me to talk to parents about this. Because a lot of times parents think, well, if I'm pregnant, yes, my baby's communicating to me with telepathy. But just because you gave birth doesn't break that bond of telepathy. And parents stop communicating telepathically with the baby because the baby's here. And now they want to use words. And the baby's like, no, I'm still reading your mind. I'm still reading your energy. I know if you're in a bad mood or in a good mood, even if you smile. And so then I started writing about energetic hygiene. How are we showing up? Are we showing up stressed and worried? I had one parent, and she was breastfeeding her baby, and she was watching a murder mystery. And it was a little gory. And I'm sitting there with her, and I was like, your baby's digesting this. You need to be aware of that. What you're thinking, your baby's digesting, and not just your milk.
That was my next question. I'm glad you brought it up again. I love the vocabulary that you're choosing to use about the baby is digesting it. And you used that with energy, with thoughts, and with actual food. Can you expand a little bit on the nature of an infant and its digestive process beyond just consuming milk or what is that called? Formula.
Yes. Completely. Just as we are. Like if I'm hanging out with Suri and she's in a bad mood, I'm actually digesting the energy that she's sending my way, and I can feel it, and it's like uncomfortable, and like I want to do something to make her feel better so that I can feel better, And so the same thing happens with children and with babies, especially because obviously children, as they grow up, they learn that we communicate a little bit different. And a lot of them will forget their abilities to communicate telepathically. But if we can cultivate theirs and let them know, like, let's both close our eyes and let's send each other a message. I tell mamas, I have a lot of moms that are afraid to leave the nursery because they're afraid that the baby's going to feel abandoned if they're not in the room with the baby. And they're really into contact napping because that's the only way that the baby feels safe. And that's not actually true. Your baby feels safe as long as your nervous system is regulated, and they can feel safe just through your nervous system. But if I'm anxious and I come into a job where I'm coming in and taking care of a newborn, that newborn is going to cry the whole time that I'm holding him. Why? Because he's digesting that. He's feeling it. He's processing it through his nervous system, which I call digesting.
Beautiful. And I've been a caregiver for children in many different forms, as a nanny, as a preschool teacher, as an aunt. And it's not always easy to regulate my own nervous system. When I was teaching preschool, one of the most interesting things that I learned very early was it didn't matter what I said or how I was conducting the classroom. I could say the same thing and do the same tasks every day, but the kids were actually responding to my nervous system. So there would be days when I would be just like inside, maybe having emotional turmoil. And those days were so hard because the kids were responding and reflecting that to me so quickly. And then when I was cool, calm, and collected, doing the same thing I did yesterday, but my nervous system is in a different state, the whole classroom would just operate like a finely tuned machine.
Yes.
And so I got to learn that early on. And then the finesse of, okay, the highest priority here is actually my own state of being. What I do from that clarified state of being almost doesn't matter. The most important part is getting myself regulated, which can be challenging for new moms, I think, oftentimes.
Yes.
Before we go into that topic, though, there's something I would really love for you guys to hear Joy share about babies and their needs, because it's not what you think it is. You shared this with me before when you list off the needs, and I think sleep comes much higher than some of the other needs that we've talked about. So will you share the needs and their order?
Yes. So we have 5 basic needs. Need number 1, obviously, is oxygen. Need number 2 is water. Now, that's not necessarily true for infants because we don't use water, but it's the formula. And need number 3 is sleep. Need number 4 would be food. And need number 5 would be connection. And a lot of times we prioritize, oh, my baby needs to feel connected to me, so I'm just going to hold him incessantly, and then the baby doesn't really get deep sleep. So sleep, even for us adults, is even more important than food. Now, obviously, we have oxygen, water, and then comes sleep, then comes food, and then comes connection. And a connection is very important, but it's not more important than sleep. And so they say that 40% of children in the United States are sleep deprived. I think that the number has grown. And obviously, as adults, there's a whole higher degree of sleep deprivation that's going on, and how it affects our nervous system and even our emotional body and our capacity to reason, to make decisions and to feel good about ourselves. So we need to understand that we must help our newborns regulate their nervous system. And a lot of that is through sleep. I have clients that have called me and say, my 5-month-old only takes a 30-minute nap all day. And I'm like, whoa, like that, a baby that's 5 months old needs about 4 to 5 hours of daytime sleep, give or take. And then they need a 12-hour night on top of that. And uninterrupted sleep is even better. So yes, we need to bring sleep into the correct priority.
All right, you guys hearing that? The third need is sleep. Oxygen, water, sleep, even for adults. And I'm sure, I know that many, hi, Mary Katie. I know that many, myself included, I have not in my lifetime prioritized sleep the way that she's proposing that we should. And I wonder what would happen for our nervous systems and our capacity to regulate ourselves if we did remember that sleep is right up there with breathing and hydration, right?
Yeah.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. Another thing that I've heard Joy speak about is the dream time for babies. And I believe the way that you had said it was something along the lines of, well, when you go to sleep, you go into your own matrix of existence. You go into your own thought processes. You go into your own multidimensional plane of existence. And so does your baby. And will you expand on that a little bit about the sleep process and the importance of essentially giving sovereignty and autonomy to the dream space for babies and for parents?
Yes. What I tell parents is that when your baby is in deep sleep, and obviously it's true for all of us, we are directly connected to source. And there's so much happening, especially for newborns. There's so much growth. There's upgrades going on. The brain is developing in the body. But also, I have a lot of parents that are afraid to have the baby sleeping in a separate room, and they have them sleep with them. But obviously, this baby needs to sleep 12 hours. And as the mom, you don't get to sleep that long. So you're interrupting the baby's sleep. But also, like Suri and I can sleep in the same bed, but we're going to go to different dimensions. She's going to have a dream about one thing, and I'm going to have a dream about something else. And I feel like we need to teach our children that it's safe to go to this dimension, and teach them how to go from awake to asleep on their own, and trust this process, because basically a third of our life we're going to spend it sleeping, and we need to learn how to nurture that, how to have proper sleep hygiene, good habits, even lights are affecting our sleep. And how do we regulate that for an infant? How do we regulate that for ourselves and even for the mamas?
Joy, when you're doing sleep training, I recognize that there's often a part of the sleep training that for parents can be really uncomfortable, and that is letting the baby cry for a little while in their crib, and through that process, allowing them to have the sovereignty of their dream space, allowing them to have that spaciousness of not being held all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, from my perception, one of the things that parents fear the most, because it feels like abandonment, it feels like abuse, it feels like I should get in there and stop them from crying. Do you have any advice on this process for parents, the giving autonomy to their young infant for sleeping rights, basically?
Yes, I do it in a very subtle way. People hear the word sleep training and they're like, "Oh, cry it out," and the baby's just going to cry alone all night. And I don't work that way. There's what they call the Ferber method. The method that I use is teaching our baby a new habit. And babies learn to process the world through repetition, through different habits. And so what we want to come in and do is set in a new habit. So I have parents that have been co-sleeping with the baby, and obviously nobody gets sleep. The baby's moving, the parents move, so they're interrupting each other constantly. And so what I do is place the baby in the crib. And maybe I'm going to let that baby cry for 3 or 4 minutes. And then I leave, and then I come back in. And so I'm creating kind of like a memory for them to remember that even if I cry 2 or 3 minutes, mom always comes back. So now they have this association. It's safe for me to be in my crib. It's safe to cry. We all cry. Crying is part of life, and especially if I've met this baby's needs. I've met all of his needs. This baby's well fed. This baby's nurtured. This baby's so well taken care of, has a clean diaper. And now he's just tired. So now we can let him cry a little bit. And I'm going to come in repeatedly. You're okay. Maybe I'm going to pat the baby. Maybe I'm going to give him his pacifier. And if he's having a really hard time, I'm going to pick him up and I'm going to calm him down. And then I'm going to lay him back down gently. So I'm building a rapport with this baby. I always come back, and I'm always looking out for your needs. And obviously when I'm outside of the bedroom, because I like to let the baby cry alone for a few minutes, and then even when I'm outside of the bedroom, I'm closing my eyes and I'm speaking to them telepathically. I'm here with you. You're safe. It's okay. I'm not outside of the room thinking, "Oh my God, this baby's crying. This is horrible. What am I doing?" I stay very, very focused, and my energy is speaking to their energy. And so when the time is right, then I'll come back in and hold him. And so maybe I'm going to do that 2 or 3 days in a row until one day I put the baby in the crib and the baby's like, "Oh, this is the new normal. I've done this before. I know it's safe." And mom always comes back. And so basically I'm teaching him through patterns. Babies understand life through patterns. And that's why consistency is so important, and routine, rituals, however you want to call it, because now the baby's like, "Oh, every time I'm put in the crib, now it's time to sleep." And mom always comes back.
Sleep training. So consistent routine,
Mm-hmm.
gentle reminders, "Hey, you're okay."
Mm-hmm.
And sticking with that until it becomes a habit, and then a knowing for the infant of like, "Oh yeah, this is just the time I go to bed.
Yes.
Oh, okay, it's safe. And I'm going to go to some multidimensional planes and have some crazy dreams. And I'll see them when I come out of that multidimensional space."
Exactly. And then they get to trust this process. It's not a scary process after that. And after we've done a sleep training with a family, they're like, my baby, like let's say a toddler, "Good night, mom," gives them a kiss and just goes to bed. and they feel so safe in their own bed. They feel safe in their own body. And because sometimes it's all about what we're not saying. If I'm always holding the baby, I'm telling him, you don't know how to do this by yourself. I have to hold space for you. And we're teaching him kind of a fear reflex. With my first son, Sam, I didn't know any of this. I was 22 when I had him. And every night I'd be in there and I'd rub his back and I'd pat him down and or lay next to him. And I did that for 12 years. And I taught him, you can't go to sleep by yourself and you're not safe in your own bed. You need me here. So when he would wake up in the middle of the night, he'd be scared because I wasn't there, because I taught him it's not safe for you to be in your bed alone. And so sometimes we need to look at those aspects. What are we not saying that they're understanding, and be very clear with our communication?
Beautiful. Joy, thank you so much. I wanted to reflect, Vivian said something along the lines of crying is an important skill.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely agree, Vivian, crying is an important skill. And I'm sure we've all experienced those weird periods of time in life where you're like, it's been a really long time since I've cried. And there's a certain kind of numbness involved in it. And then she says, I wish I could cry more. Vivian, careful what you wish for. You just might get it. Also, I do hope you get a good cry. It's very cathartic and it feels really lovely.
And we're also teaching our babies it's safe to cry.
It's safe to cry.
Because you are going to cry so many times in your life, and it's okay, and it's cleansing, and it's beautiful. And I've seen babies that are like, I'm crying really loud and nobody's doing anything about this. And they actually feel afraid because they've never been allowed to cry. And especially with boys, like, you know, even when they grow up more, then it's like boys shouldn't cry. But it's safe to cry. And our trauma doesn't come from the crying. It comes from other things. Like if I'm withdrawing my love from the child and I'm angry at him or impatient, then that can create a trauma. But if I'm lovingly holding space and like I'm meeting all of his needs and I'm there present, his 3 or 4 minutes of crying is not going to cause him trauma, because that's the biggest thing. Now, there are a lot of moms that when we hear our baby cry, it triggers our fight or flight. And we're like, oh, my baby's going to feel abandoned. And that's where we have to go inward and find what trauma do we need to heal in ourselves so that we don't project it onto our child. Because a lot of times we're just projecting our own fears and our own trauma to them.
Projecting our fears and traumas onto them and then being like trying to hyper correct the system when all we actually have to do is breathe and calm our own nervous systems. I'm curious, Joy, if you would be willing to share with us and the people any other stories you have about telepathic experiences inside sleep training or outside sleep training. One of the things that I'm looking for here is when you leave a baby in the room. I remember you sharing with me, like, go sit outside the room and just tell the baby telepathically, I'm still right here. And they get the message.
Yes, exactly. Because I have, you know, like you can go to the kitchen and wash the dishes. You don't have to wear your baby. I have a lot of parents that are wearing their baby, but they're wearing their baby out of fear. This baby needs to be with me all the time so he doesn't feel abandoned. And it's like, no, go lay the baby down. Like, you don't want to be held all day long. Like, stop, you know, and you're washing the dishes and your baby's not comfortably sleeping while you're holding them. And so there's a balance in everything, you know, still wear your baby, but when it's time for him to go to sleep, lay him down and then just communicate telepathically. I can be washing the dishes and my baby's sleeping and I'm like, my love, I'm right here. And it's almost like the babies have an ability to scan the house and they know that they're under your roof and you don't have to be in the exact room for them to know that you're still part of them. And I have just felt that, you know, there's times where I'm making a bottle in the kitchen and the baby's crying and I'll just tune in telepathically, my love, here I come. I have to get the bottle warm and I have to make it. And here I'm coming. I got to pee really quick. You got to hold on for another second. And instead of me, because there's a lot of mamas that will go into like fight or flight. Oh, I shouldn't pee. And I got to hold it. And they just go into this nervous energy. And then now the baby's going to cry even more because whatever message I'm sending from anywhere in the house, that baby's receiving it. And so if I go into fight or flight, or I'm such a bad mom because my baby cried for 2 minutes and they had to wait for their bottle to be warmed, I'm making up that story, and I should not be projecting it onto the baby. So I felt that many times. And sometimes when I connect with them telepathically, they actually go back to sleep. By the time I have the bottle ready, baby's already asleep. So it works. You just have to try it.
Absolutely. Vivian has a question. Some mothers are afraid of SIDS. Have you worked with those mothers ever?
Definitely.
Mhm.
Definitely. And if we want to look into the history of SIDS, we want to see that this started, like, SIDS did not really exist until like the 60s. And all of a sudden they have put arsenic and other chemicals into our mattress, fire retardant chemicals into our mattresses. Why? Because people would smoke in their bed, they fall asleep, and next thing you know, the house is on fire. And so these chemicals that are in the mattresses, plus these mattresses, we would use them for generations. It's like, this was grandma's mattress, now it's mine, and it's gone on. And so they would lay the baby on their tummy. So the baby has a smaller lung capacity. Baby would be on his tummy breathing in these chemicals, and they would never wake up again. You can look this up, you can Google it. And so a lot of times what we do is we try to use mattresses that are chemical free. And there's also some special plastic covers that you can put on the mattresses if you're not able to get an organic chemical-free mattress. But there is a big history about this. And but all I have to do is teach these moms how to regulate their nervous system. And also what I tell them is, this child doesn't necessarily belong to you. This child belongs to the universe, belongs to God. And you're basically an underpaid babysitter, for this individual that you're raising.
Mhm.
And you have to trust in the greater picture, and knowing that there's a bigger force keeping your baby alive. So and you're going to find this in all aspects of raising a child, is that you have to trust, and we can't be in fear. And I feel like that's the biggest thing, is teaching these moms to trust themselves and to trust their baby. And obviously, there are many babies that do pass, and that's a very difficult thing to go through. And there's a lot of guilt that these moms carry. And that's another aspect that I'm working on, is to be a death doula and help these moms through this transition, but also learn that you have to trust the process. Maybe your baby just came in for a small chapter, but he lived his full life and what he was meant to live, and you have to trust that. So it's really difficult to be a mom, because it does trigger so many of our fears.
Mhm.
But if we can find a way to be trusting in this process, then we teach our children to trust the process too.
Mhm. Trust in the grander universe. And I'm curious for mothers out there, and I'm a pet mother, and it is difficult to be like, they don't belong to me. They're their own sovereign beings. And yes, for this like period of time when they're young, they need support from another larger human to get them to a certain point of functionality, but they don't belong to me. They are not mine. And getting into the mindset of raising children, understanding that one day you're going to need to release them, and that they're their own person, and the amount of trust that requires for parents to be able to embody, as well as realizing, and also simultaneously seems like it's a relief, because it's not all on you. There's a higher organizing force that's keeping this baby alive and thriving. And we also belong to communities and have family networks. So for parents, typically are not alone, but the weight of the caretaking and the organizing and the safety net that they feel they need to create can become consuming.
Yes, there's a lot of fear that moms have, because we were meant to be in a community. And now all of a sudden you have these moms in the nursery by themselves or in the house. Dad has gone to work. And it's just like, this is all up to me. And especially if you're breastfeeding too, it's like, okay, I'm their source of food, I'm their source of everything. And that seems overwhelming. So just teaching moms, how to cope with this. There's a lot of really good coping skills, but also setting up a community where you can talk to other moms. And the other concept that I use a lot is letting moms know you're raising an individual. This is not an extension of you. This is actually an individual that chose to be birthed into this existence. And we need to teach him the skills so that he can survive. I explain to parents, there's two major things you cannot do for your baby. You cannot eat for your baby and you cannot sleep for your baby. And those are the most important cornerstones of what you're going to work on in the first 6 months. Teaching this baby to eat on a regular basis versus, let's say, snacking every hour. That's not good for any of us. And it's not good for a baby.
What, Joy? Snacking every hour is not good for me?
Exactly. And maybe when the baby's newly born, we're feeding often. But once that baby has regained their birth weight, then it's time to go on to a 2.5 or every 3 hour routine, because their body is just like ours. They need to go into digestion and then into a time of rest and then to sleep. And then we wake up again and we start and we eat. And if you're digesting 24/7, your body's exhausted and it doesn't have the energy for the growth and for your emotional body to be balanced. So these babies are highly stressed, and we don't want our babies to be stressed.
That's perfect. I was actually going to go back to this comment in a moment. So Labyrinth here asks, have you ever worked with babies that have a really difficult time sleeping? And what are some of the reasons that it can be challenging?
The biggest reason that I see nowadays is reflux. It's acid indigestion. My, I guess, way of understanding this is that as a woman, I'm absorbing toxins every day, whether it's smog, whether it's chemicals in the food. And when I get pregnant, I'm passing some of those on to the baby. So these babies are born with severe reflux, which means the flap between the stomach and the esophagus is very floppy. And so the minute that you lay this baby flat on his back, that little channel has opened up and a little bit of acid has come up. And so as soon as you lay that baby down, he's screaming. Why? Because he's in discomfort. So it's very important to understand why your baby's not sleeping. And I can see it just in their faces. They'll make a sour face, or they're opening their chest and opening their neck because they're trying to calm this burn. And a lot of times you're going to see babies that are constantly eating, but they're really chasing the burn. And so there's really good remedies. One of the best remedies that I've ever come across is activated charcoal, and they mix it in gripe water. And so there's a little potion called Colicom, and you give them this and it coats the esophagus, and you see this baby go from, stressed out to immediately relaxation. And then, okay, this was reflux. So a lot of reflux, because babies weren't necessarily meant to sleep on their back. We did that. We changed them from sleeping on their belly because of SIDS to flipping them on their back with nothing in the crib, And I would love for these people that invented this way for babies to sleep, for them to sleep flat on their back with a firm mattress and no pillows and no blankets. And tell me how you can sleep that way, because we're actually asking our babies to do something that is not natural. They've been like this, for 9 months, and all of a sudden we put them where they're just moving their arms around and they're startling themselves. And so we use things like the swaddle to make them feel more hugged, could we say. But there's many reasons, but I would say the main reason that I see right now is the reflux or some kind of gastric discomfort. A lot of times it has to do with mom's diet. I go into the home and mom's drinking a cup of coffee as she's breastfeeding. And I'm like, yeah, that coffee, I know that you think is okay, but your baby's going to have a hard time digesting it. And there's some babies that are more sensitive than others. A lot of the typical midwives and lactation specialists would say you should be able to eat whatever you want. And maybe that was true when we ate a very clean diet, but now our diets are full of chemicals and we're using a lot of substances that are not good for our body, like caffeine and sugar. and there's a lot of chemicals in the dairy. So I see moms that are eating even a pizza. You know, I had a mom telling me my baby's been crying the last 3 days. And I said, well, what have you eaten? And she said, well, my husband made a big pot of spaghetti and we've just been eating out of that for the last 3 days. And I'm like, the tomato is too acidic for the baby. And so they're having a hard time with that. So we can use different ways of helping these babies. Sometimes they need a bit of elevation. A lot of times we make changes in the mom's diet. And then the other is using, you know, a supplement that will help them be able to neutralize the acid that is coming up.
Joy, thank you for that really thorough information. People are responding here. Mish, don't worry. It's okay that you had coffee while you were breastfeeding.
Yeah.
Obviously, they turned out okay, 27 and 33. No long-term impacts. But did you encounter any reflux during that period of time? And then Vivian also says it's true with medications as well. Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
correct.
And then hello, Michael Zane. Always good to see you, bro. And through me, I didn't give them coffee. Oh yeah, Mish, I figured that you were drinking coffee, not giving your babies coffee. Understood.
And every baby is different because
Mhm.
there can be some moms that are breastfeeding and drinking coffee and there's no problem at all. But then we're seeing a group of new babies come in that are very highly sensitive
Mhm.
and they just won't tolerate it. So what I encourage parents to do is go on an elimination diet. Let's take away all the things that we think might be irritating them. And I tell them, go on a diet as if you had a stomach bug. And what would you eat? You're going to eat
Mhm.
super bland. And then once the baby has calmed down, let's say 3 days of a bland diet, now let's bring in coffee. And let's see if this baby has, you know, goes back into crying a lot. And so, okay, well, now we know it is the coffee. Or you just bring in different ingredients one at a time so we know what one is bothering them.
Thank you so much, Joy. So Joy has an agency that works mostly out of Las Vegas, Nevada. And I believe Vivian's question was, are you in Hawaii too? I'm sure she could get you a doula in Hawaii. She also travels if she is called upon. She's actually going here at the end of the month back to Nevada because she's been privately requested because she is the cream of the crop in this industry. So she has an agency that works out of Las Vegas, Nevada, and she has women that she has trained in this practice that she sends out to support in the sleep training process. And one of the things that I am so curious for you to share with us, Joy, is when you have people come onto your team, you were speaking earlier about energetic hygiene. So when people work for you, is this something that you train them in understanding before you deploy them to go support families?
Definitely. So I was very lucky to end up in Las Vegas, and it just became a place for me to grow my business. And I had so many clients that I couldn't take care of them all. So I started bringing in a team. And also, like sometimes they want 24/7 or they want 7 nights a week. I was doing 7 nights a week and I'm just getting older. I just couldn't handle that. So I would bring in someone and let's say I did 4 nights, they would do 3 and we would kind of switch off. And then I saw the need for a really good agency. And now most of the time I don't do the work. I send my ladies, but I do put them through a training. One of the reasons I became a newborn care specialist trainer or postpartum doula trainer was because they needed to learn these basic principles. Anybody can change a diaper, anybody can feed the baby, but how are you showing up? How are you coming in? And it's leave your baggage outside, come in. And I even encourage them to just stop for a minute before you actually go and ring on the doorbell and enter the home. Just bring your energy down and come into this loving presence because that's what that baby is looking for. So I do provide that kind of training, and there's doulas all over the world. So wherever you are, I'm sure that you can find a postpartum doula. I don't do any of the birthing. I only do postpartum. And the other thing is that I also coach parents online because I do live most of the time in Costa Rica, which I'm super lucky to do. And I just have people that are like, I don't have a budget to have someone come into my home. Can you just walk me through the process? So I give them that package where we're on WhatsApp, we're going back and forth, and we're troubleshooting because we're fine tuning those sleep skills that this baby needs. But a lot of times I play the role of a therapist, like, oh, my baby's feeling traumatized. I'm like, well, what did you go through when you were a kid? What kind of trauma do you feel? And actually your baby doesn't even know the word abandonment or doesn't know the word trauma. So he's not dealing with that. That's something that you're dealing with. And so just even me being a calm presence with the mom really helps them explore those areas of their life that are making them more anxious so that they can be more present with their baby.
That's so beautiful, Joy. And you guys can find Joy at thejoyofsleep.biz.
Yes.
And you can look at all of her different services there if you would enjoy to. I actually had the opportunity to go through the postpartum doula certification. That's certification training with Joy. So I'm actually also a postpartum doula now as well. I'm also a trained death doula, and I thought it was very interesting, the similarities and the crossovers between the beginning of life and the end of life care, and the need for telepathic communication, the need to calm the nervous system, the need to just be really present, the need to be a stabilizing force as the family system is being rocked by this either new entry or this exit. And sleep is one of the most important parts of that system as well. Are you also trained in CPR? That's important. That was important for my daughter. That's what Vivian is asking.
Yes. Everyone that works for me has a CPR certification, a newborn care specialist training, which is very similar to postpartum doula. There's a little bit of difference between the two. Everyone has their CPR, their background check, their resume, and then obviously a one-on-one with me where I'm really getting to know them. I'm feeling in and I'm looking into their background and into their previous jobs. So I'm definitely connecting with them and obviously very intuitive. So whatever they're not telling me, I know. I just know. So yes, CPR is super important.
Yeah. I also, I was a preschool teacher for a long time. And I remember parents would come in and things would be going on with their children. And as the teacher, without anyone telling me, I would telepathically be like, yeah, but this is actually what's going on, right? And it's a really interesting thing navigating the level of the parents with the infant, with the knowledge that you're coming in with. How do you balance in a respectful way the perspective of a parent and their ideas and maybe the things that they want to try to do or that they're feeling committed to do that might actually be counterproductive to the actual process of supporting a child to sleep or be mineralized in a healthy way? How do you interact when there's a discrepancy between a parent's desire and what you understand to actually be the healthiest thing for an infant?
Well, I always honor what they want. There are parents that are like, I'm going to have my baby sleep on me 24/7. And I'm like, okay, I will honor that. But it's not sustainable because your back is going to hurt and your neck is going to hurt and you're not going to get any sleep. And so I wait till they get exhausted and then they're ready to hear. But I'm always explaining to them, just as I'm explaining here, just in lay terms, like, do you like someone to hug you all night long? When you're sleeping, it's like, no, you just need your own space, and a baby's the same. And so I try to put it in a maybe sometimes funny way or just a way that they can understand. And that's another gift that I bring to the table is that sometimes I just know how to explain it to them just by knowing their background, knowing where they live, and just even them sharing their stories with me. And I just try to give them different illustrations and I give them different options. There's many ways that we can help your baby to sleep, but eventually we want that baby to learn to sleep independently and in their bed. So I give them little illustrations. When I get to be in their home, then I can actually model it to them. And when they see, wow, this is not injuring my baby, then I'm going to consider it. But there are some that are very resistant and they'll call me 6 months later and ask me to come in and help them.
Yeah. Vivian says, wow, Suri, I need to have another baby now. Whatever makes you happy, Vivian, I fully support it. I'll come. Let me know if that occurs. And when the baby shower is, maybe I'll fly in or just, have something shipped to your house. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. It has been a joy to share joy with you, and bringing her wisdom and information forward. I know I personally don't have children of my own, but a lot of the information that she shares, I never knew a lot of this information. I just learned the thing about SIDS too. Vivian, that was such a good question to ask. I didn't realize that there was a chemical component to the uprising of sudden infant death syndrome, and that it could easily be avoided. That's really quality information. I also really appreciate the knowledge of oxygen, water, and sleep are actually the main priorities, and food comes after that. And along with so many other things, energetic hygiene. I know we're talking about infants here, that you can really calm and soothe an environment and bring about health and wellness for your infant through calming your own nervous system. But I'm sure you guys can all imagine that that doesn't just apply to infants, it applies to all of us.
Yes.
And so energetic hygiene, oxygen, water, and sleep, routines, and speaking with your babies and maybe even your close friends and pets through telepathy. And if you haven't looked into it yet, you guys, check out the telepathy tapes. You can watch them on YouTube or on Spotify, and I'm pretty sure Apple Music as well. There's 2 seasons out right now, and it is a very brilliant exploration of telepathy and the function of the telepathic nature from autistic children. But then in season 2, she expands it even further. So please take time to enjoy that. And with that, Joy, do you have any last words for the people?
No, just cultivate your way of connecting with your babies, with your children, and even with your friends. You know, you can still send them a love note from your mind and later ask them if they received it.
She sent me one last night, and I definitely got it. All right, you guys have a great night, and I will see you in 2 weeks.